What is going on, everyone? Welcome to the Autonomous Validation Summit 2025, hosted by Pika Security. I'm Ron Eddings, CEO of Hacker Valley Media, and I'll be your moderator throughout this day. First things first, this session is completely live. We are here with you in real time, which means the chat is open, the mic is hot, and we want this to feel like a conversation, not necessarily a broadcast. So please drop your reactions, your hot takes, and any questions you have in the chat along the way. The more that you bring, the better that all this is going to be. And with that out the way, let's go ahead and get right into it. Here's the reality that we're walking into. Attackers, they're moving into what is truly machine time because breakout times have collapsed to under 30 seconds. AI has reduced the time to exfiltration to just 25 minutes, and Anthropic's Project Glasswing just proved all of this. It proved that AI can chain multiple vulnerabilities together, and you can no longer afford to let your validation run on a calendar. You got to run it continuously. So today is all about cutting through the chaos and getting to real evidence and helping your security program actually work. We brought together industry analysts, alliance partners, and enterprise security leaders to show you how autonomous context-rich validation gives you the proof and also leaves you with the receipts. We're going to be showing you how leading teams are putting all this into practice as well. Here's what we got lined up for you. We're going to be kicking things off with David B. who is the CISO at Atlassian. He's going to be talking about how AI adversaries are reshaping the threat landscape. Then we're going to get an analyst view. We have Ying Ting Noah at Frost & Sullivan. Ying is going to be drawing on the Frost radar for autonomous security validation. After that, we have Volkan Ertuk, co-founder and CTO of Pika Security. Volkan is going to take us into autonomous validation as the cornerstone for post-Mythos readiness and show you how Pika Swarm moves and shakes in action. We're going to be closing things out with the perspective of two epic security leaders who live on the front lines. We have Johnny Christmas, global head of offensive security at Kraft Heinz, and Marius Pokus, who is the global VP of cybersecurity and CISO at Glow Financial Services. They're going to be putting all of it on the table and showing how to use all of this in practice. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our first speaker, David B. CISO at Atlassian. David, I know that you're gonna be walking us through and talking about the elephant in the room. This one is gonna set the tone for everything that follows, so you better be leaning in. David, the floor is yours.
So this is actually an exciting yet a very terrifying time, I think, for the whole industry, myself, as the CISO community, right? And how we need to think about Mythos and what everything's happening here, right? And let's really drill into this a little bit, right? Because I think it's so important for us to all understand it and be ready for it. First and foremost, right, is that the world's changed. And so the idea is before, name a favorite vulnerability, name a variant, problem that we're encountering, especially in Windows and other type of things, is now pretty much everyone, can actually take advantage, of what may be occurring here. Is so that some people say it's like the offense is democratized, right? But ultimately is that you don't have to have a deep research set of tools and capabilities to actually do an attack or build a vulnerability, or we say weaponize it. The idea now with AI is that if there's a given vulnerability, that someone in minutes can now actually weaponize it and actually be able to do an attack against something that may be unpatched or known vulnerability, or where there is no patches. And so now the tools are the biggest threat, if you will. It's not the people, it's actually the tools because of what they can do. So what does this actually, mean, right? So the idea is that they really don't care anymore, is that of how you think about, your organization, right? They don't care if whether you have a defense, capability. They don't care if you have monitoring. They don't care if you're using a managed service provider, right? Is the thing is that the timeline things are now instantaneous. So before we're saying, okay, a given patch, let's say patch Tuesday type things, right? And so that today, you don't have a month to patch things anymore. They actually see everything in your company as a potential attack surface. So that's kind of one of the points of the slide. It's not just like, okay, let's go after your website. Let's go after your outward facing, capabilities. Let's go after, what your email system, right? Is that now today everything is available. Uh, Everybody is using a SaaS application, right? And so they don't really care anymore. Is that, hey, of what your assets are? They actually can go after all of those. Now, if you look at, let's go back to the days of SolarWinds, number of years ago, and what do the Russian attackers do? Did they come in through, the website or an external vulnerability? No, they compromised a salesperson, right? Anybody, a marketing person, anybody can be compromised. Their application can be compromised, and they can come into your company. And once they're in, what happens? The bad things happen, right? So what's next in that is, so it's really is that how we go beyond, right? The attack surface I described is so that today, the a government organization, can you actually look and scan everything? Because it goes too fast right now. So that if you think of the cloud today, before, let's go back years ago, is like, okay, this year we're going to do Service Pack 2, or then next quarter, we'll actually go to the latest updates, or this month, let's do Patch Tuesday, right? And so in the cloud and cloud applications and everything people are building now is like, is everyone doing anything less than once a week? And sometimes people are publishing every day, right? And so, and then you're going to say, let's do a validation, let's do a scan once a quarter, once a year, is saying if we're up to date, if there's any risk. No, it's actually every day now. And so this is where everybody has to get ready to that. Everything is going to be under attack every single day. This is the world we're moving to because of AI. And we can't say that, okay, let's go back. Let's get rid of AI. Let's change the world. Let's block AI. Let's change regulations. It's the cat's out of the bag, everybody. It's never going back in. And so the world has changed enormously, and we have to be ready for it. So building on that, right, is that the big thing is, this is where, I think the pen testing and everything is a little bit different, is so that historically say, let's do pen tests once a year. Let's do pen tests once a quarter for your neighbor, PCI audit, if you will, right? And so now really we have to move to really that continuous pen testing, what's the attack surface, what's the exposure, what our applications are doing, right? And so that if we don't do it every single day, the attackers are going to do every few seconds because they can. How can they do it? Because of AI, because of automation, right? And so that every time that that scan's occurring, right, then they're just going to then say, all right, I found it. I'm going to weaponize it. I'm going to use it. And so that's what the world has changed enormously. It's not just looking at historically what they've done in the past, is that they can do everything now. So next, in thinking about that a little bit, is that as mentioned before, right, is that the weaponization, the exploitation, right, it's magnified. And I don't think we're going to get to a state of, quantum and those type of things, but an element is that things are going to go so fast now because of Mythos, and I should call out that Mythos and Anthropic is not the only model. There's a lot out there already that people can do that. It's like most of the world is based on open source, right? And so that means the attackers have access to most of your open source already and all these models. And so that we saw one example from, the great security startup, Security, is they look at various things like an SIEM MCP, and like they're saying, hey, everybody's accepting this malicious code already, and you don't know it, right? And so the element is that we're moving from just discovery to, hey, here's a vulnerability. How can we attack it? This is what the attackers are thinking. But like, it's now going from that to full weaponization and attack. And then what are they going to do? Are they going to steal your tokens? Are they going to steal? They can start mining for Bitcoin again, those type of things, right? And so that you have to be ready. It's going to happen in real time, like never before. So the other element, right, is that I think that it's an illusion to a degree, is that looking at the heat map, right? Looking at your organization, saying, hey, where do we stand? Let's get like the attack framework. What's our risk, or those type of things, right? Who needs a dashboard anymore, right? Things like that. Is so that you're saying that, hey, we've got these controls in place. We have a WAF. We have monitoring in place, and so the reality is now the WAF is that it could be used as a tool, to help you, but it's not going to block anything. So we've seen nowadays that thinking of the weaponization, right? There's a vulnerability. So okay, I'm going to block that packet. I'm going to block, that interface. Like, well, the attackers then with AI, they're going to say, find me 15 different, encodings that will get past the WAF, and they will do it. And then can you actually changing it that quickly as base of the tech? No, because all it takes one, they can only be one. It only takes one to get in. And once they're in, right? And so that the idea is that having this in place is important. And so it's not like it's ever been before. We have to be ready for this and constantly monitoring and those type of things and being ready for it. That's going to come here very, very quickly. Now, next I really want to talk about is we have to move, moving at machine speed, right? So the element is that we'll say that from a how we look at things and from a review perspective and the change perspective, right? The humans are actually the threat to a degree, right? And so that of whether you can make a change, are you going to take a patch, are you going to take a fix, so those things like you actually need AI to help you with this, because AI is not just of like how do you build the patch? Well, AI should build the patch. AI should test the patch. AI should deploy the patch, right? AI should actually be looking at saying, hey, here is the threat intelligence. Let's start building the patch. Let's start building the remediation, because you can't have humans in the loop anymore for this, because the humans saying, well, let's be generous, right? Well, things like, okay, we can take 24 or 36 hours, or let's take 3 days to like determine and go fast and do things. Before, if you did things in 3 days, you're like, wow, that's acting fast and you're on top of it. Nowadays, 3 days, that's too much, right? Now we can actually say 3 hours is too much. If an attacker can weaponize it in 3 minutes, then we need to act with the same speed, right? And so this is where you have to actually building your algorithm and building your logic, right? The idea is that how you can have all these automation, just like of things to determine is like, yes, does anything need additional check or those type of things? But otherwise, AI is got to move into place from a defensive perspective. That is the future that we all must have here. And next is I think is that if we don't adapt to this, we're going to fail. The reality is to say that companies to say, oh, let's not use AI. Let's not, use AI coding. Let's not use AI for remediation, those type of things, right? And so the element is that the reality is we have to do this, constantly. We have to be constantly moving, right, on those type of things. And so I think that if you ignore this and you don't pay attention to this, right, you've already fallen into the trap and everyone's going to know it. The attackers, they know your positioning already. And so you think they're actually not, since they'll know that, you don't think they're not going to take advantage of that, right? And so this is where everyone has to move to the automatic validation, automatic scanning, automatic remediation, and doing it reality. And so stop relying upon your historical policies, your historical approvals, your historical kind of review process, because that's not the world we're in. The world's changed and it's never going back, right? And I think that's a big element of it. And so really what I did is kind of want to pull together here is kind of like, some recommendations, right, to the CISO community and everyone, is that how you can best, I say, combat this, right, to a degree, right? And first and foremost, I say that, hey, admit you have a knowledge gap. Certainly is that today you have whatever you have in place today is like you need to build your kind of your automation agents to help this, of how they're going to do the scanning, how they're going to do the remediation, how they're going to do the blocking and those type of things. And that has to be in place. And so acknowledge that. The second is that, hey, let's do a scan once a month, right? And do a report. Let's do a dashboard, right? No, it needs to be continuous validation, right? You need looking at snapshotting constantly. It's like, okay, here's a failure. Sorry, here is an issue. Here's a bug. Here's a vulnerability. Here's a patch missing. Here's a config. It's finding it immediately and automatically acting on that. There's another element is always like the third one, right, is the offense versus defense, silos. The analogy I always love to use for this one, okay, you have the red and the blue. They're against each other. No, let's think about our favorite, NFL football in a given team. Is the offense and defense on separate teams? No, they're just one team, i.e. the Seahawks, right? Okay, on that. So ultimately, they're together and you have to think about them being together. The fourth one is that a big thing is how you're looking at how you're building things, right? And, kind of using the manifest only models, right? Is that stop putting user supplied strings and other types of things into execution, right? This is the bad things that everybody has to think about in the deeper development side. The other element is number 5, right? Is saying stop going on looking at your KPIs, your metrics, your dashboards, things like that. those aren't matter, right? What's the evidence? Is this exploitable or not? So a lot of things you think of the AI is that, okay, you're doing the continuous pen testing, you're going to do continuous monitoring, you do the continuous scanning, right? Is then actually using the tools and using AI to saying, is this exploitable or not? Is this actually, can they get into this or not? Actually looking at the evidence and using those tools to help you, to not to say, yeah, my favorite scanner says it's fine, but it's like, or it's not exploitable. Like, no, actually use for the evidence and testing that yourself. The other one is that things that I think this is where mythos and some of the models are starting to scare us a little bit here. Is it may be not just one vulnerability, it's actually the change or the compound vulnerabilities that you have to look at. And so you can't just look at it, oh, this is a low score, this is a low score, oh, that's a medium, right? But if you put them all together, it's a high, because if they can do all three, that is actually, I think, with the misconception and what people are not realizing is going to happen now is like, yes, we have a whole bunch of lows and there's a medium in there, but individually they can't do anything. But if you chain them all together, which the attackers will do with AI, with their weaponization will do, I'm going to chain them together. And guess what? I got in because of all of them in aggregate, right? And so you have to be ready and testing against that. Number 7, right, certainly is that assume that, your normal layers, they're failing. Things that, oh, we have a WAF in place. We have this control in place. We have the monitoring in place. We have our SIEM in place, right? And therefore is like, are you sure that's actually to work? You need to assume. We always just say, assume you're compromised, assume you're breached, assume your controls are failing. The other element is, I think, as you think about the number 8, right, is really of looking at on the your overall endpoint protection, your endpoint management type of things, right? That is certainly is anything that fails to initialize, anything that goes wrong, like kill it, stop it. Moving to that model is AI to automatically looking at things. Okay, let's go put a ticket. Let's go examine it. Nope, let's kill it. You're moving to microservices and containers. Something goes wrong. Something doesn't initialize properly. You kill it, right? Those type of things. The LM element is certainly is that looking at, for the overall of getting the better patches and things like that, is we're looking at not just these individual type level things, right, but looking things that are the actual problems at the vulnerability or the protocol level and other type of things, and getting to the source of things. I think we're going to start seeing this more and more now. Certainly it's not, everyone's not explicitly saying it, but certainly we're going to start seeing the operating system. Don't take the higher level things, take the overall operating system, the lower level things, and taking everybody and demanding that. And we also need to move to that. We can't wait a month or a quarter or a year, for operating system and other type of things to come in. And ultimately, last but not least, we say, number 10, like own the architecture, right? If you actually have not, you're building applications, you're building your infrastructure, right? If you do not own the design, if you don't own it end to end, guess what? You means you already have a failure. You already have a hole in the system. And that means you're actually not looking and being ready for AI and how you own it. So you need to actually using AI to do the scanning, to the analysis and the deconstruction of that. So you know where your threats are, you know how what needs to be remediated, actually building it. So going to using the offense, of the coding to help you as part of your defense.
Hey, David, a great question just came in from the audience. It says, Mythos showed us that AI can chain 0 days faster than teams can triage. From your perspective, when you saw that, what was your reaction?
I think that we knew about this. It's been evolving even before AI occurred, right? That, attackers and things can weaponize things. Once a company puts out their patch, every from 24 to 48 hours, they can reverse engineer it and weaponize it. So now it's things saying now because of the AI, we know that it can do it in minutes, right? Seconds is probably a little bit exaggerating, but we know it can do in minutes. And so we have to be ready for that. But the biggest element of this is where of looking at things is that AI is the equal defense that it is to the attack. So AI can identify, right, the vulnerability, but AI can identify the fix. Humans don't need to triage this anymore. AI can do that.
That's very true. Hopefully everybody is leveraging it and taking some tips. The next one actually flows right into a great segue, and it says, the cycle from vulnerability discovery has gone from days to weeks to hours. When that shift was happening in your world, were there any processes that broke in your environment?
The one I think about here is of we be looking at the overall, ecosystem, right, of the open source and other types of things, right? A big part of it is that we see that of where exploits can go in hours is sometimes it comes through the supply chain, right? Is so that we actually don't have a kind of controls and monitoring of your supply chain of the open source libraries. If you just take them in real time, that's actually kind of your risk in itself, right? Is like, oh, there's the latest npm package comes down. It's like, oh, just take it in. Sometimes you say you need to hold it, you need to dampen it, you need to examine it and wait for those things. So sometimes being so fast in building and using AI to build your software is actually your biggest kind of risk in itself, right? Versus slowing it down a little bit actively is sometimes one of the best defenses.
Absolutely. It's always a moving target. And what I'm hearing from you is sometimes you need to be able to adjust. You have to be able to go slower when you need to, or go faster when you need to. Another question just came in that says, if you had to pick something from this ever growing list for the next quarter, if you had to pick one focus area to be a little bit more secure, what would that be?
I think the biggest element is how you move to that continuous testing and continuous, kind of your attack surface and those type of things. Because the biggest element I think of many organizations run into is if you don't have a great inventory, you don't know where the problems are, right? If you don't actually have a good asset inventory, a good registry, you understand what your environment has. If you don't know what you have, then how do you know if you're being attacked or if you're vulnerable, right? So I think that's the first one. So the first is get your inventory, have it ready for that. The second is then really start continuously scanning, of what's your tax service things. So when something does happen, you know where it is, you know what to do, and where to go after it.
12 months from now, what does a security program look like for you?
12 months from now, I could say that if I'll say first, I'll say 3 years from now, I'm going to assume that, many organizations, software development uh, deployments, 95% will be AI driven, right? 3 years from now. So we walk that back, to 18 months from now, 12 months from now, I'm going to say that in the world now is like probably 12 months from now, 60% of things where all your code and deployments be AI operated, right? And so I think is that thinking about not just of code development, but all your defenses, all your analysis, all your remediation needs to be equal to that, right? And I think that's the shift, right? Is first we were nervous about coding agents now, but we're very nervous about remediation, right? Or fixing, right? Or remediation agents. We got to move away from that, right? We shouldn't be afraid of that. We actually should be more excited about that.
So we are at a PICUS event, and it would be a complete miss if I didn't ask you, where does PICUS fit in all of this for you in your world?
So certainly, I think it's one of we see the overall space, right, of the world, right, is I was kind of we were looking at the big white space here of everybody is that we have agents, we have AI and things like that didn't exist, 2 years ago, right? And so that most organizations need to have something to actually for the monitoring, the detection, the defense, capabilities, right? Is that because it can't be done with humans anymore, right? And so this is where the companies need to come in and helping organizations because it's all organizations, right? It's not just one or two are at the threat here, but all organizations need things to come in and assist with this. And this is, I think, one of the things that is important in dealing with, say, the elephant in the room.
A massive thank you to you, David, for setting the stage and not pulling away any punches. The takeaway that I'm walking away with is the world has changed, and it's going to be continuing to change all around us, especially with our favorite two letters, AI. If David's points landed for you, drop a heart into the chat and let us know what resonated. We would love to hear from you.